And welcome to Going for Two War Room Monday Night Live. Here it is, week 12. My name is Kyle Senra. As always, we've got Gladys, we've got Dan, Dr. Jim Ferretti. I think I got it right this time, finally. It only took 3 episodes, but hi, everyone. Everyone's in shock that I got the name right. Everyone was going to laugh at me and make fun of me.
Stunned silence.
All right, so hopefully we can, hopefully our viewers, the same way, we can wow them with our expertise and genius, and or make them laugh. Hope maybe a bit, but no laughing matter. COVID-19, and it's hit. It's the Ravens, and I guess the Steelers too. But this game is now the Ravens-Steelers game scheduled for Wednesday night. Afternoon, evening, or it's Wednesday, which I guess is 6 days after it was originally supposed to be scheduled. So, yeah. What do you? I guess. Sorry. What are the? One of the consequences of this is it appears that Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins both have a chance to play. I was reading Tom Pelissaro tweeted that out. So. Does anyone want to comment?
I'm gonna say my 2 cents. I feel like, without trying to sound too insensitive, there was a bird flu joke in here this week and everybody missed it. And I'm gonna let that one go. Someone else can make a joke out of that.
We haven't done. It's not the Monday Night Preview yet. You can save that for later.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess I could jump in on this a little bit. So this game really is a microcosm of like the entire world, right? Like COVID is everywhere, and we're going to try to put that aside for now, in the sense that focus on the fantasy football ramifications. Obviously, this is a very serious thing. It's been going on for months. We all know about it, and it's pretty terrible in any way, shape, or form that you look at it. And this is just a microcosm of that. So as far as Ingram and Dobbins playing, I guess my take on it is I'll believe it when I see it. Because if they legitimately tested positive, going into last week, it's possible. But they have to be asymptomatic and they have to have negative tests. And, I don't know if moving the game one day is going to make that much of a difference. That's kind of a wait and see. I think this underscores kind of a bigger issue that I wanted to address really quickly going into the fantasy playoffs. And that is that, COVID is everywhere. And usually the traditional recommendation would be going into the fantasy playoffs, you want to back up your studs and your main players with their actual backups to kind of increase your chances of having healthy bodies and raise your floor for your team, as opposed to earlier in the season when you might be mining for upside and taking backups on different teams and things like that. The caveat to that is this year is that might not work so well if you have players on a team that have tested positive for COVID. So the issue is with contact tracing, as we saw with Denver in the quarterback situation this week, is that if a player on a given team tests positive for COVID, every other player on that team is at risk for missing a game or multiple games because they end up testing positive or they end up being ruled ineligible due to contact tracing issues. And that's exactly what happened in Denver this week. So definitely something you need to consider on teams like the Ravens, the Steelers, and any other team that ends up with positive tests going forward. You really need to be vigilant about your guy. If you have a guy on a team of a player that tests positive, even if it's not your player, he could theoretically test positive at any time and you could lose him for a week, multiple weeks going into the playoffs. That's not a spot you want to be in.
It almost seems like we've seen with the Broncos this week how it could totally wipe out an entire position group. Maybe the argument against handcuffing as many players and as many different teams as possible, because the back you have the backup lined up for your running back and they both are out, and then you have nothing.
Right. It's just something to, it's one other thing to worry about, but it's something to really be vigilant on, where it's like if you see somebody test positive on a team and you have a player on that team, to resist the urge to be like, oh, wow, that's good. It's not my player. Because in a day or two or a couple of days after that, they could test positive as well, or be ruled ineligible due to contact tracing. And we saw that with Thielen. Briefly, he ended up having a positive test. He's had a week of negative tests, and allegedly he's asymptomatic, so they expect him back. But he missed that game just because of one positive test, and then a week later he was out, ruled ineligible.
So, yeah, I guess the truth is we don't know. We don't even – we know this game is now scheduled for Wednesday, but we don't even really know that it's going to be played until really kickoff happens. So stay focused. I know I just saw MFL tweeted out that for their system, it will count towards Week 12. So, fantasy results delayed a day later. I feel as though most sites will probably follow suit, and that game will remain as part of this week for scoring. Yeah. Not sure if that how that affects timing with waivers. May have to make waiver claims before the game, and that could be tricky complication. But it looks as though story-wise, these players will still count if the game is played. Gladys, any comments about
the Steelers, Ravens?
Yeah, Steelers Ravens game, or anything else you want to talk about, but.
I think that the fact that this game has been moved from Thanksgiving to Wednesday is incredibly ridiculous. In light of the fact that the Broncos were made to play with a practice squad wide receiver, and it's because, like the doctor said, the other three quarterbacks tested negative, and they tested negative Saturday. But they were not practicing the 6 feet, and they went into the quarterback room without mask on, so they were being punished, basically, for not following protocol.
Yeah.
But they were negative tested. So you're going to make them play with a guy who gets a call Saturday and saying, hey, and you're going to go against the New Orleans Saints defense, but you're going to play quarterback, even though you're a wide receiver. Meanwhile, let's let the Ravens and the Steelers go 6 days and keep postponing this game out. It's an unfair process is what it looks like. And maybe it's not. Maybe there's a valid reason for making, besides just being petty and trying to punish a team. But it doesn't appear that way. And I think the NFL brand took a nasty hit this week. Not to mention like my fantasy fortunes, but that's neither here nor there. I had Patrick Mahomes, and I still lost. I can't even begin because I have
Derrick Henry in the league and lost. So yeah, I get you.
I have two Steelers who in our league it's on CBS, and we don't have a COVID protocol in that league. So the Wednesday game, if it's played on Wednesday, it won't count for our scores. So thanks Chase Claypool, thanks Deontay Johnson. I won't have that score. But I mean, aside from that fact, it just seems unfair. It just seems wrong that they're allowing this to happen. And that's spoken from a Steeler fan. Of course, the other thing would be to have the Ravens forfeit the game, but or play it later on. I don't know. It just seems it's screwing up everything. For what reason? I'm not even sure why.
If I can. Didn't the league owners vote to have an extra round at the end of the year for something like this if it happened? Isn't that something that happened? They came together and they said, there's a round 18. We're talking about Pittsburgh, who have been shafted from the bye round all season, right? They've been chasing a bye. They can't get it. And we're talking about, round 18 and the owners voting on something that can't happen. So I think this is one of those things where they've put into place at least half a plan of action. I think it was just to appease themselves. But why not exploit that? It sucks for Baltimore to have to plan for a short game. No, not Baltimore, Pittsburgh, because Baltimore have done the wrong thing, clearly. It sucks for Pittsburgh who have had to plan for a game on a short week and then think they're playing early Sunday and then think they're playing Monday and then think they're playing Tuesday and then it's not going to happen. It's one of those things where, you've put into effect the reason of having an extra round and then now what? This is ridiculous. So, they should have. If Pittsburgh aren't playing until what, Tuesday? They're saying, or when do they think they're moving that game for them this week? They have Washington.
Wednesday.
We can laugh at Washington all we like, but that sucks for them because they're looking at what then. A week's time they're going to play, and then maybe a short week on a Monday or something. Like they've been given the absolute shaft on this, and it's ridiculous. The fact that they're 10-0 will make it feel I don't want to say make it feel a little easier, but Kansas are winning. Do you know what I mean? Like teams are starting to get hot at this time of year. Imagine saying, "Hey, listen, you can't play, and by the way, you probably won't have a bye this week, and." We're going to just keep moving to a shorter week, and it'll feel like you've had, if we play you on Wednesday and then play you on Monday, it's like that 4-day turnaround like you had Sunday to – these guys didn't get to go out and relax, be with family for Thanksgiving. They didn't get none of that. These guys would be absolutely irate, and I get it. There's going to be that one guy out there that says, oh, but they get paid a lot. Mate, this is ridiculous. These guys have been absolutely given the shaft, and I don't know, Baltimore kind of half tried to blame it on Tennessee at one point. It's no, this was in-house, and you blew this in-house, and what was it, the strength and conditioning coach, right? He's the one that got done.
Right.
Yep.
The irony of the health guy in the building. The one person who should be calling out people for doing things correctly is that guy. And he's the one that's calling.
That's not a good sign for the organization, is it?
Conceptually, think about it like that. The guy who's meant to take the most care of these guys' health on a practical level is the one that showed the least amount of care. I would be absolutely petrified at having that guy around in preseason again. I would not want him near. That's the guy he's not, the order of care is gone with that guy. I don't know how they keep him on the books. Well, that for me is unforgivable. I'm all for the health. I'm all for the health field. I used to be in it myself. But if you're that guy in the building that should be promoting that, Jesus.
Well, I just want to interject something here. I really want to try to underscore the point that one of the dangers with this thing with COVID-19 is, the easy communicability of it. And I really want to just try to get away from being, punitive to people that get it, as in blaming the victim. You know what I mean? It's anybody can get this thing at any time, and there's not necessarily a maleficent intent.
Oh, sure.
Necessarily. So, it does suck that it was somebody in-house that ended up having it, and it's easy to spread. I mean, that's just the way it is. One other thing I wanted to kind of interject as well while we're talking about it is they're still testing the Steelers and Pittsburgh, and they both had positive tests. We're not guaranteed that other people aren't going to pop positive between now and tomorrow, or now and Wednesday, and this game goes away. So this is all tentative to the extreme. They're really grasping at straws here because they obviously do not want to push this game off of this week. But if you run into Thursday, now you got week 12 games potentially being played on the week 13 slate, and I don't know what the heck they're going to do with that. But the point is, there's no guarantee that this game gets done even on Wednesday.
This is madness. It's utter madness.
The world is upside down. This is just a microcosm of that. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised it took this long. We're in week 12 going into week 13. This could have easily broke bad in week 2 or 3 when the whole team went all.
I just feel like the owners came together and they put together this whole plan to have that extra week at the end of the year. This is what it's for. This is 100% what it should be for.
Totally agree.
This is I've mentioned it a few times on our Monday night show. I've mentioned it a few times. I've always been a big advocate of saying these bye rounds, I get it, but this year, we can all admit, right, has been unlike any other year we've ever seen. And all these bye rounds, we're week 12 in, we forget that there was no preseason, right?
Right.
So I've always said that at some point through the year that the league needs to have a reset week where everyone goes home for a week, abides by the protocols, goes through testing, and comes back on a Monday. Now, that sucks for TV ratings, but it's a huge bonus, I think, for the players' health. Now, at least you're giving everyone a chance to get level. You'd avoid things like this. And look, Thanksgiving, what was going to happen Thanksgiving? People were going home. I'm out here in New York, and the laws and rules that they put on people out here was ridiculous. Checkpoints everywhere. You need to have doctors' things for this, doctors' things for that. All right, great. Well, I hope the Dolphins have the same testing. Because they came into Jersey for that. New York doesn't. New York does. It's just utter madness. They should have had at least a week to give everyone a chance to get reset, have that 4 or 5 days to get their testing in order, and come back. Again, like, it would have sucked Thanksgiving weekend. Maybe do it a week before. I don't know, but you know, you've put this week 18 action in play just in case to give chances. What is it? An extra playoff team comes in or something, right? They voted
Each
on
conference, yeah.
They voted on an extra playoff team as well. You'd think owners would be in favor of that too. So not only do you get a chance for teams to have that extra week at the end of the year to play, that's an extra bye week for the teams that don't have to play, and now an extra team or two get in. I feel like, why did they have this vote for in the first place? Why? If you're not going to put this into action, this is crazy. It's like going to the grocery store with a list and just getting anything else. It's madness.
All right, well, let's, before we get too mad here, let's, well, actually, we're going to talk about the Giants, so maybe Dan will get mad again, but a few quarterbacks got hurt, so let's get away from COVID and now just the rest of the body being hurt. So Daniel Jones, injured hamstring. You've also got Teddy Bridgewater, who did return from an injury. He missed week 11, came back, but now looks like potentially a shoulder injury. And there's also Tua Tagovailoa, who missed this week. Injured the thumb and ended up not playing. So we'll see. Apparently if he's healthy, he's the starter, is kind of in the announcement there, but we'll see if he's healthy. So, Jim, any of those players you feel the need to address right away?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's start with Tua because that one might be the easiest. This one is very similar to the Matthew Stafford situation from a couple of weeks ago, where he injured his thumb, and it was a question of, how bad is this injury? It seems like his is a little bit worse. The issue with the thumb, especially on the throwing hand, you're worried about those pesky ligaments, right? So could he have a torn ligament? He very well could. They're already kind of laying the groundwork that they don't expect him to start. If they're saying, that he's the starter when he's healthy, well, he's not healthy right now. So could we infer that he's not going to start this week, or that they're laying the groundwork for it? I think we can. If he hasn't had an MRI yet, then that will determine the nature of whether he's going to need surgery or not to repair this thing, and he ultimately might. So it looks like it's a potentially bad situation and could get worse. So, Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he's still out there, he's definitely somebody that you want to fire up, especially as, injuries are hitting and you want to back up your teams going into the playoffs, because he's shown the ability to be able to perform pretty well when he's in there. And then we could tackle whichever of the next ones you want. We got Daniel Jones, we got Teddy Bridge, who's bit by the injury bug again.
Sorry, Dan. We'll go with Daniel Jones. And sorry, Dan. Daniel Jones as well, but also our Dan here.
Oh, look, I think I'll pipe in, not from so much I'll let the doc take over that hamstring issue. Look, there's a couple of things I want to say here. First of all, the Giants play on the road at Seattle week 13. Good chance the Giants aren't winning that one regardless. Giants have been playing better of late. Not well enough to beat the Seahawks on the road. So sending him across country, I don't think that would be the smartest idea. And I think off the top of my head, not the Bengals, we just played the Bengals. We have Cleveland week 14, because I think that's what it would be. So they're talking about this kid being tough. I hate the idea of that, because tough doesn't cure everything. They're saying he had like an ankle issue. He was out after 9 days, playing in 3 weeks, or something stupid like that. Colt McCoy isn't really viable unless you have Sterling Shepard. I think that'll be his go-to. He's just going to dump it. It could be Dion Lewis as well. He's someone you might want to get a look and see if you could grab. They don't really play it to Wayne Gallman in the passing game, but I could imagine those are the two guys that are going to take off. I'm pretty sure Sterling Shepard's still available in a lot of leagues. This guy's still getting around 8-9 targets a game. He is a PPR monster. He'll get you 14-15 as your wide receiver 3 that's still out there on waivers for most leagues that have 12 teams or less. Giants are playing Arizona. There we go. Thank you. Look, we played Arizona last year at MetLife, and was a weird game. I feel like it was like 7-0, then 7-all, and then it was like then they scored 14, we scored 14, something stupid like that in Arizona. They haven't been, to be fair, they've lost a few in a row, albeit to decent teams. The Patriots, I don't think, are what their record states. I think they've just been unlucky as well. But you know, I'd be surprised if we see Jones back into the Cleveland game. Cleveland week 15, Baltimore week 16. So I would be surprised if that happens. And look, hamstrings we've seen with Julio Jones, they can be fickle beasts. You're, you know, especially with Daniel Jones, like he's the rushing yards leader for the Giants, I think. So we're talking about a guy who uses his wheels better than most quarterbacks in the league. This is something that they scheme for him. It's not a panic thing. This is what they do for him. He looks good when he does it. We can go back to Philadelphia a week or two ago, 40-yard rushing touchdown. He does these sorts of things. So for him, he needs to be right because as sad as it is, the Giants are still, up until tonight, we'll see how Philadelphia go, top of the NFC East. They are playoff contenders. At the moment, it looks like they play, if everything were to finish today and Philadelphia hypothetically lost, they'd play Tampa at MetLife. And if you remember that Tampa Bay game, the Giants were unlucky for a DPI call last play of the game, Carlton Davis on Dion Lewis. So, you know, they need him right. Colt McCoy, whatever. Like, this is a downgrade to everyone on that team. And you got to hope that they can do something respectable against one of these. It won't matter because, again, we can laugh at Washington a little bit. They don't look like the worst.
Can we laugh at Washington? I mean,
they don't look
up on Dallas pretty bad.
Yeah, they whipped up Dallas, and then they also got towed up by Detroit. So, you know, then they got beaten by us twice.
Can we really laugh at anyone in that?
And before that,
anybody's viable to win that division and make the playoffs.
I said it since the start of the season for the Giants, and for those who rate and subscribe to the Giants, Backroom Giants podcast, what's up? More than anything, as a plug. I said at the start of the year, the Giants could be anywhere between a 3-win team and a 6-win team. Anywhere between 3 to, like, if everything broke well for the Giants, you're looking at maybe 9 wins max. But if everything was terrible, I had money on them to be I had them to have the most losses in the league, and for a period of time, they were 0-5. They had that ability in them because that team is like Washington in such a rebuild phase. So, you know, the defense for the Giants looks okay. Leonard Williams has been playing out of his freaking mind. I could talk about Logan Ryan, James Bradbury all day. Darnay Holmes as a cornerback has been ridiculous as a rookie this year. Out of UCLA, he's been amazing. Yardim's come on okay. Like, they're getting better. But you're also talking about a team in Washington whose defense is there already. They're set, and now they have a half-decent quarterback. And it's a shame for Dwayne Haskins. That's a conversation for a whole other day, and I hope he lands on his feet and goes somewhere else in the near future because I'm sure he's quite talented. But Alex Smith is able to get it to his best players, get it to Terry McLaurin, get it to Logan Thomas, and be able to make sure that Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick can get their work done. If they can do that, they'll win more games than often than not. Get to 6 is the aim of the game for the NFC East right at this point. You get to 6, you're in. And that sucks. But I'll tell you what I don't want to be doing. I don't want to be going to New York or Washington in January. It's cold as hell. And those empty stadiums, that wind breezing around, I want no part of that at all. So, you know, as much as we laugh at these two teams, they're both very much in it. I think Dallas, they've quit. They have quit on their coach and their team. I hate saying that about athletes because when there's money on the line and reputation there, no one wants to be that team. But Philadelphia, I'm sure they try. They're just bad. We'll get to that in a whole other.
We do have a game tonight involving them. Wow, look at that.
We have Philadelphia tonight.
Yeah, we're not. It's not fraudulent. It actually is Philadelphia.
Good,
but
it's one of those things where, like, you know, if Jones can get right for that, I know you got to forget what's happened this year for both Washington Giants and even Philly. It's a 6-week season starting from now. Get yourself 2 to 3 wins because you need 3 if you think Philadelphia can win at least 2. So you got to get the 2-3 wins, and anyone that can get to 500 the next 6 weeks is in. That's how it'll work.
So, Jim, what do you?
I have a question about. So the Giants will play the Cardinals week 14. Kyler Murray's shoulder. Do you think that it's still bothering him? Like, he didn't really look.
Yeah, it looked good.
At all
it looked good
in that game.
It did not look
and
good.
if you don't rest him, Is that an injury that needs rest, or is it an injury that you can play, like walk it off, like rub some dirt on it, and it's better?
That's a great question. So just to tackle Daniel Jones real quick, Dan, excellent analysis, no notes. I think you nailed it. So nothing else to say there. We just got to watch it. I don't think he's going to play this week. I think you nailed it. But we'll see. Sometimes they'll surprise us. Kyler Murray, yes. AC sprain on his throwing shoulder. I think we may have alluded to that last week, how it might be a problem for him. And it turned out that he didn't perform so hot. And unfortunately, he didn't really run too much either to kind of make up for the fact that I'm sure his shoulder is still bothering him. So the question, is it something you can rub some dirt on it and kind of gut it out? The answer is no. Should he rest it? Yes. Will he? Probably not. That's just the way the NFL is. If you can go out there and you can gut it out, most likely you're going to go out there and gut it out. So until I see him have a game where he does something that resembles what he can do as far as throwing the ball, I would be really hesitant to use him because this is one of those injuries, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record with AC joint injuries, but they're really emphasized, and this is something that can linger potentially for the rest of the year. And to be honest with you, all it's going to take is one more hard tackle where he lands on that shoulder, and he could still injure it worse and be out for the rest of the game or for multiple weeks after that, and potentially end up needing surgery or something like that. And that's not a situation you want to be in going into a potential must-win to get into the playoff, a win or go home to get into the playoffs, or once you get into the playoffs, you start losing guys in game, that's a death sentence potentially. So that's the take on that.
It's almost so. I think that maybe the consequence, a bit of a downgrade. You're always going to play Hopkins, but maybe Christian Kirk suddenly, who was looking like almost an every week starter, depending on, he might be someone that you're really hesitant to pull the trigger on in your lineups. So maybe a bit of downgrade on Christian Kirk, especially. Looks like Kenyon Drake got the volume though, so maybe if anything, almost an upgrade on Drake, and maybe we'll see potential upgrade on Chase Edmonds in the coming weeks as well. But it looked like the lack of Murray running led to Drake getting the ball more.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of like Cam Newton, if you remember when he was with the Panthers his last season. He had a shoulder injury that he was trying to gut out, and he couldn't throw the ball more than 20 yards. So you had all of his wide receivers were a huge downgrade, and what ended up happening is all the running backs, including McCaffrey, ended up being even better plays than you would have thought because that's all he could do. He could run, he could throw the ball 10 yards, or he could dump it off to the running back. So that's an excellent point that Drake and Edmonds and anybody else that's out there could potentially get an upgrade as long as Murray is out there, because I don't think he's going to be able to throw the ball deep like he would normally be able to, or at least he's going to be limited in that regard.
I would say that people need to start looking at Andy Isabella, who plays at least 70% of his snaps out of the slot.
Yeah,
especially because Larry Fitzgerald missed last week on the COVID list. So because did Fitzgerald test positive?
Yes.
So we'll see how long he's out for. But I mean, if he is out for a long period of time, then yeah, Isabella looks like their primary slot receiver, and maybe shallower routes from there. So speaking of running backs, although we did just get away from them slightly, but to go from Drake on to both Dalvin Cook and Josh Jacobs with ankle injuries. So Jim, what do we know about them and expecting about those two?
Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know much. So what happened with Dalvin Cook is it looks like he injured his ankle. He was out for a few plays, ended up coming back. That seems to be kind of underreported, as far as we know that Dalvin Cook has had issues as far as getting nicked up and missing time over the last couple of years, even though he's amazing when he's in there. But this is something people are sleeping on, the fact that this could actually be a legitimate injury, which seems like they might be. He's in legitimate danger of this being something serious that we might not find out about for a day or two. So if you have waivers running and Madison is still out there, he's a great spec pickup. And take a chance that you could hit the lottery in week 13 and maybe going forward, because we just don't know how bad this is. Nobody's saying anything. I haven't seen anything about it, which is not always good news. It just means they're being evaluated. So that's a situation with that. More to come on that. And Josh Jacobs, So he has an ankle sprain, and they haven't delineated whether or not it's a low ankle sprain or a garden variety ankle sprain or a high ankle sprain, and that makes a big difference. And just go into that really briefly as to what the nature of that is. Number one, there's reports of a mid-ankle sprain type injury. Don't believe the hype on that. Something's either a low sprain or it's not. And anything other than a low ankle sprain, treat it as a high ankle sprain. And why is that bad? So in the ankle, you have multiple sets of ligaments. And the ones that are the lowest down, where the ankle meets the foot, or the bones in the lower leg meet the foot, are the lower ligaments. And those are the ones that are most commonly injured for anybody that's ever twisted their ankle or rolled their ankle or something like that. That can be really painful, but that's the injury that you have a reasonable chance of being able to tape it up, numb it up, and gut it out. So players frequently, even though it's usually takes multiple weeks to heal, they usually can go out there and gut it out either the same week or in most cases miss a maximum of 1 week. Now, a high ankle sprain is another set of ligaments above the lower set of ligaments. And with a high ankle sprain injury, what happens is the lower ligaments are injured, the higher ligaments are injured, and all the tissue in between is injured. So it's a really bad injury. And that's something that no matter how good, tough, or anything else that you are, it's just too much space that's injured that you can really kind of gut it out. That's something where players end up missing 4, 5, 6 weeks and could be knocked out for the rest of the year. And we don't know what the nature of this injury is. So we're going to have to watch the practice reports and the injury reports, but just beware of if reports come to mid-ankle, that's bad. A high ankle sprain is obviously bad. A mid-ankle sprain is almost as bad. So it's low or it's other. And if it's other, it's really bad.
Just for comparison's sake, Christian McCaffrey, isn't that what held him out for, I believe, something like 7 weeks? And McCaffrey, I don't think, had missed a game before this season. So, better injury health history than what Dalvin Cook has.
Yeah, and it's one of those injuries that just doesn't make a difference. If you get a high ankle sprain injury, it's a really, really bad injury. And it's going to knock you out for a long time, as we saw already. And, again, the reports that you get from the coaches and the players may not, reflect reality. When CMC originally injured that ankle, the estimation was he might be out a week or two. They were off by about 5 weeks on that. So that's how it usually plays out. And I don't expect this to be any different if that's what happens with Jacobs. So our old friend Devontae Booker, if he's out there, he's a guy you want to take a hard look at. Because he might be in there not just this week coming forward, but well into the fantasy playoffs if this turns out to be a mid or a high ankle sprain injury for Jacobs.
All right. Gladys, Dan, any further questions for the doctor while he's in?
While he's in. I guess I see what you did there.
I think it's hard to talk about what happened with DJ Moore at this point, right? Because it hasn't really come out. I haven't seen what happened. Non-contact, though, as he's landing.
Uh-huh.
What would your – I don't want to do this to you, but what would your first instinct be on that?
Oh, please, do it to me.
What do you think? What do you think that would be? Because as he's landing, and I've heard someone say his knee and the other foot. So someone's saying that he's done his knee as he landed and his Achilles and his opposite Achilles, right? So yeah. That's bad, right?
It doesn't sound good.
This is bad, right? If he's done his Achilles and knee,
yeah.
Whoosh. And why isn't Kenny Golladay on the IR? It's past Detroit's bedtime, right? What? Well,
with new leadership there, maybe that changes. Who knows?
I think his IR paperwork got misfiled with Matt Patricia's last paycheck. I don't know.
Yeah.
He filled it out in pencil instead of in pen, and it didn't go through on the scan.
I heard crayon, but I don't know. It could be. So DJ Moore, it's a really good topic that we could touch on a little bit. So what the coach said with this is one of my favorites, red flag thing. So we talk about like when injuries happen, my spidey sense starts tingling a little bit. This is one that's got my spidey sense tingling big time. So what did the coach say? He said the X-rays were negative, which sounds reassuring, right?
It's not. Nah, he's lying.
I'm sure that's true. The unfortunate fact is that X-rays aren't really the best evaluation for the ligaments and the soft tissue of the ankle, which is probably what's injured. So the fact that the X-rays are negative doesn't really tell us anything, although it sounds reassuring. So it isn't. We still need to find out what's going on here. I haven't heard anything else other than the X-rays are negative, and the same things are in play. He could have an Achilles injury, which you would not see on an X-ray. He could have a low ankle sprain. He could have a high ankle sprain. He could have both. He could have something else. We don't know. So this is really something that, I'm waiting to hear something more definitive. But in the meantime, if you have DJ Moore, you got a bye week anyway. But if you're counting on him in the playoffs, you might not have him for the playoffs. So you got to start, looking at what that's going to look like in 2 weeks potentially. And again, always thinking about this week, next week, that's it. I need healthy bodies for this week and next week, and don't look any further. And this definitely falls into that category of start making alternative plans and hope for the best, but prepare for the potential worst.
I mean, we could talk about the dynasty implications of that if it is a torn Achilles and how long that, how much that affects his 2021 season. But obviously, a little early to speculate there. So I'll not interrupt Dan and let him say what he was going to say.
I would say this is. I'm looking at their depth right now. You got your three there with Samuel Moore and Robbie Anderson. Your next receiver up is Farouk Cooper. I don't know if anyone's breaking the bank.
I think it's.
Cooper, and I'm assuming.
I say Brandon Zylstra actually. He's been playing.
But I would also say that by the time something more definitive about Moore comes back, I'd probably think McCaffrey will be too. So I think that's probably where they'll go with this. I don't think, we were talking about Dalvin Cook before, and okay, it's Madison, maybe Boone, but this is the sort of thing where they're just going to mess around and throw CJ Ham and Amir Abdullah in. This is what they do. Yeah, we laugh.
No, you're right. Yeah.
CJ Ham turns up. And this is where
there's that one game Abdullah scored the touchdown and it wasn't Madison. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what Minnesota do because Minnesota are horrible. But I would think that by the time that they get back from their bye, McCaffrey, if he isn't playing, they are playing. I think he might be back week 14. And their season's over. There's no need to send him out there. You paid him that much money, but at that point they might need him to take some work. But let's hope DJ Moore is good and. It's not too severe.
All right, so DJ Moore, I think no more on this. So, Jim, take it away.
Yeah, so, wanted to touch on McCaffrey really quick while we're kind of on the subject. Because of the bye week this week, the speculation is that he's going to be back in week 14. That is not a guarantee. So be wary of somebody who drops Mike Davis because he's on a bye and the expectation is, and the reports are, that McCaffrey is going to come back. And the sharp move might be if somebody drops him to scoop him up if you got room for it, and you could potentially have a starting running back for week 14 if it turns out that McCaffrey doesn't come back, gets injured in practice, or some other horrific thing happens to him, which has kind of been the theme for the year. Not just for him, but kind of league-wide. So anything can happen, and if somebody, is in a position where they're forced to drop Mike Davis because they need to win or go home this week, then be on the lookout and, make that scoop if you can.
I'm also saying that Carson Wentz is a broken bag of trash. Is there any fixing this?
He is starting, right? I mean, I know one of our viewers, Robert Cooper, wants to know who is starting at QB for Philly. It is Wentz, right?
Yeah, it's Jalen Hurts in a trash bag. I don't care.
Sorry, Robert. I believe Wentz is starting. I think
looks like Wentz is starting. I think Hurts is going to be more involved. That's the rumor. I guess we'll see how the game flows.
They've said, Jalen Hurts is taking more stuff. He's not. Stop
Now, especially now that they have all their wide receivers healthy, you figured that'd be the one thing that instead of run Josh McCown out wide, for instance. Anyway, so Jim, thank you for joining us. But I think before you go, you wanted to mention something to everyone.
Absolutely. So one thing I wanted to touch on real quick, we didn't get to, Lindsey for Denver, reported as a knee injury, forced out of the game, no clarity on that situation yet. So just kind of need to watch the injury and practice reports. If he's out, then both Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman are, really good speculative pickups or pickups, for that. We just don't know what's going on there. Otherwise, again, always a pleasure to see you guys and do this. If anybody out there watching has any other questions or anything that comes up in this crazy week, you can find me on Twitter at TFSDoc, and you shoot me an email at thedoc@thefantasysportsdoc.com. And a special announcement going out to everybody here at Going for Two Live is I actually have a book that's dropping tomorrow.
Wow.
It's going to be available on Amazon. And the name of the book is Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to.
There we go.
It talks about all the stuff that we talk about here, teaches you almost all the things that I know, and gives you the benefit of all that medical knowledge that's in this cranium right here, without the $150,000 of debt and the cafeteria food that I had to endure for 10 years in medical school. So it gives you the opportunity to be proactive, actionable, and it's just in time for the fantasy playoffs and for the holidays. So look for the announcement on that on Twitter tomorrow, the link to Amazon. And I really appreciate it if everybody could go and check it out. And with that, I'll leave it to you guys. Enjoy Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday games. And
Thursday as well.
Whatever else they decide to throw on the schedule.
I just saw a Field Yates tweet said there's a game on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
There you go.
Let's do it.
That'll be what a great week. I mean, it's supposed to be week 13 unlucky, but we're pretty lucky with that. Gary's saying congrats, by for So again, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Gary.
Well done.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.
What a stocking filler for your loved one.
A little something in there for everybody.
There we go.
Great week, guys.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so Monday night preview. One of Dan's favorite teams to talk about.
If I can get into this just quickly, because I spoke to Jeff about this earlier, Jeff Lambert, El Capitan, if that's what he is. We were meant to talk about the Tuesday night game. I'm looking at BUSR and other bookie sites, and they've basically, I can't see anything there for the Ravens or Steelers game other than what they had earlier as a line. I'm guessing maybe that's because of the running backs coming in. Maybe Lamar Jackson might be back. Maybe James Conner's back because the OU was set at 40. And I'm sure if there is increased player quality, that those numbers would fly as well. So I don't know if that suspension of that will pop up tomorrow afternoon where they have more clarity, because I wouldn't want to be putting numbers out for a game that looks like it's going to potentially get canned one more time. So just to go over that, we can go over that afterwards. But
I think we should prioritize the Monday game. I mean, it is half an hour away, so we'll do that. And if there's time at the end, we'll touch on it.
Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there first.
I will say I don't think there's a chance Lamar or Connor play because since they both tested positive, I think they tested positive later than Dobbins and Ingram, so I don't think they can make it back for Wednesday.
Kyle, 3 days ago we said Dobbins and Ingram weren't playing either, and here we are. They could be lining up tomorrow. So, on Wednesday or whatever it may be. I'm not going to say anything definitive because if there's anything that we've learned about this game this week is that nothing is definitive. So, they've
although I think if this game was played tomorrow, Dobbins and Ingram wouldn't be able to play. So the 1 day is making a difference for them, and I don't think the 1 day makes enough of a difference for Jackson.
I would heavily think that's why that they've taken I can't find anything for it. So we'll get away from that. We'll kick on to Monday, but I just wanted to put that out there.
So looking at the line right now on BUSR.com, and of course, if you want to join, feel free at BUSR.com/going-for-2. You get a 20% bonus offer when joining. So if you want to use that tonight, here we are. Eagles, Seahawks, over-under is 50. And apparently it's gone up at one point today. And I know, Dan, you want to say something about it. And quick, the Seahawks are favored by 7. So Dan, early comments about that.
Yes, Seattle's run on the road isn't great. They're 2-3 away from Seattle, 5-0 at home. Philly at home, whatever the reason it would be, are generally okay no matter what. They don't get pantsed at home. It's pouring down with rain. It's hammering down. Conditions are terrible. I think it's a great day to fire up Chris Carson if you have the chance. Carlos Hyde, I still wouldn't be shying away from either. But, last time they met, 17-9. That was the score the last time they met. It wasn't the high-scoring game that you think it would be, and I'm sure both teams were a little bit different the last time they met. And I like this one. Carson Wentz is the first QB since Ryan Tannehill in 2013 to be sacked 40 times in the first 10 games of a season. That's... And I know that Seattle's defense isn't great, but Carlos Dunlap has made a massive difference to that team. I'm sure Gladys and her IDP News will get onto that. But Carlos Dunlap and you saw it last week when they played. Dunlap came out of nowhere, and he was making. I think it was the game-winning play on Kyler Murray that made the difference. That's what he can do. So Philadelphia without Lane Johnson as well. He's been ruled out. It looks like Kelsey and Peters are going. That could be an interesting thing to watch there if Dunlap's on the outside and Wentz doesn't know what he's doing again. That could be the matchup to watch.
What we're getting from that is, first off, go the under on the over-under, then you're saying for sure.
It's hammering outside. I think you could hammer the rushing yards on the quarterback, both of them. We'll get to that. Where are we at? I think Russell Wilson is at like 30.5, and I think Wentz was at 13.5. So thank you to our friends at BUSR. I would be hammering the rushing yards on both quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure. I like those lines. Gladys, before we specifically get into the lines, Gladys, what's your make of this game right now?
Like Dan said, since Dunlap's been there, they've increased the Seahawks have increased their pressure rate at 11%. I know. I'm like, no. What?
They're coming for Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You got me. Sorry. I broke bad. Sorry, Gladys.
I fully expect them to, even more now that it's like as bad as Dan says it is, to pressure Wentz more than expected. Dunlap has made a significant difference in that offensive line. It's like 3 weeks, night and day. So Wentz, he's just been historically bad for even him. So I don't. What the line started at what? It started at like 40.
I first saw it at 48.5, but I didn't. I doubled down this morning at 49, and I saw it at 50 about 30, 40 minutes just before the show started. So for that to come up a point in these conditions, that's you have to really think. Where are we at here? Let's have a look. They had Philly at one point at 21 points, and I guess Seattle's come up maybe at a half a point each. If you're telling me Philly can get to 21.5 and Seattle at 28.5 in those conditions, I don't know. I feel like
Seattle doesn't play inside, so they're used, and they play in Seattle, so they're used to the rain.
Yeah.
So are we thinking Seattle favored by 7? We like that line. We like taking them and not Philly in the points.
Again, you know how I feel about home underdogs and the unders. So, I'm all about that. But, we're also – no, I'll leave that to myself. I'm going to keep quiet. I'll leave that one for later.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the next Back Row Giants episode. That'll be fun.
What am I going to talk about? Colt McCoy?
Yeah. Well, no, I figured you're just going to rant more about Philly, to be honest, because of that. But all right, so let's get to some of these player prop lines. So Dan's already mentioned both the quarterback rushing yards, 30.5 for Wilson, 13.5 for Wentz. Yeah, I love that for Wentz especially. I think with considering that line, without his frontside guard or frontside tackle protector in Lane Johnson, he might see some rushes more and just kind of take off. So. Yeah, 13.5. I think is you can get that on one run.
Yeah, Yeah, I kind of thought I went that way too, and
And I'm guessing, are we thinking go away from the passing yards? 232.5 for Wentz, 282.5 for Wilson.
I kind of like Wentz at 232.5. I like Wentz for 232.5. Look, Wilson can do anything he wants, anytime he wants. So, what does it matter? But 282.5 and 2.5 touchdowns for Wilson in those. I think we can lean the under. I would lean the under because I don't think they will be troubled by Philadelphia. Look, Wentz more likely 232.5 and 1.5. I kind of like that a little bit more. Plus, he's 13.5 rushing.
Yeah, definitely 1.5 as opposed to Wilson 2.5. That scares me considering, Carson's back. They may want to run extra in the red zone. They did it more with Carlos Hyde last week, and they trust Carson more than Hyde.
Look, I like the idea very much, and we'll get into these guys a little bit later. But I kind of feel like, put your hand up if you love Greg Olsen. I think there's nobody in this NFL supportive community that doesn't love Greg Olsen. But I think him not being here opens up Will Dissly, who everyone was kind of high on last year, but I think he had the Achilles or the patella tendon like Jimmy Graham did a few years ago in Seattle. Also frees up Jacob Hollister. So guys like that, big boys in these conditions too, I kind of like that as well. So, look, I don't think Seattle are going to be without passing options. I think Russell Wilson can get there, but again, if he's also rushing for 30-plus yards, which I think we think he will, it's going to shorten the field up for him to actually have to launch one. So, I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but I think this will be more of a battle than I think an aerial assault than what most people are thinking.
Do you think, because they've got Wilson at 24.5 completions, do you think that's more attainable than the yards at 282.5?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of do. I think that's a bit more attainable, but again, that would mean he's probably spreading it about. I think where am I looking at here? They had Metcalf at 5.5, Lockett for 5.5. So that's feasibly 40% of his passing attack right there. If you think he's going to get to 24.5,
yeah. So
maybe I don't feel overly confident in that.
Again, more on the rush yards. Gladys, any of the quarterback props that you want to focus on? Any that you think you should avoid as well?
I like. Hold on. So they're having Wilson at 20. How many completions? 20.
24.5 for Wilson.
So Philly allows on an average 32 attempts per game. Because of the rain, we're saying that he's going to, his last 3 games, he's had 41 attempts, 37 attempts, and 28 attempts. I like the completions for Wilson, yes. And I like the running yards for Wilson. I also like the running yards for Wentz. I mean, that's really good.
13.5, yeah.
I just want to cut in. I just saw it come up now. We're talking about a guy that has 71% completion percentage and 30 passing touchdowns. Yeah. Underestimating that guy is probably futile, right? Like practice futility. I mean, to ever underestimate a guy like Russell Wilson and say, no, he won't.
It's not something you want to go under. You either take the overs or you just ignore it and go with other props.
Yeah, you could be fine with that as well. You'd be happy either way.
So I think of the quarterback props, Wentz rushing at 13.5, and then Wentz interceptions at half an interception. You gotta think he's gonna throw at least one pick. He's been has it been a pick a game? It seems like he's close to that pace. He might even have more.
Yeah, I don't think that too. Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when Daniel Jones used to fumble and throw intercepts all the way. I remember this happening. I don't know. I remember when Carson Wentz was this secure quarterback once upon a time, and it was just invincible and undefeated. But no, he really is just like losing it. Did I lose you there for a second? Because this whole idea that this guy is I told you, he's a bootleg Derek Carr. Everyone thinks otherwise, okay, but whatever.
Wentz throws interceptions at 3.5% of the time. So
that's Jameis Winston level. I'm pretty sure Jameis had 3.7 last year.
12-12. So
12 through 11 games. He's got more than an interception a game. So yeah, I think maybe even more so than the rush yards. Carson Wentz, get that interceptions.
And Jameis Winston can't take the place of a guy that threw for 3 passing yards at halftime this weekend. 3 passing yards at halftime this weekend.
They've won both games, though, so what do passing yards even matter if they win both games? I mean, let's be honest, they did not need to throw the ball at all against Denver. That was never going to be a football game.
We can call it the mercy rule. I understand. New Orleans won that game on defense alone. I said it before. Taysom Hill's going to kill Alvin Kamara, and he has. And Laddie Murray fits them better for what they're doing with Taysom Hill, and he does. What did he have, like 7 or 8 points this week, Kamara? 10 last week? Like, come on. This is like you had 70. What do you have, like 70 passing yards this week, Taysom Hill? 70. Something. I don't even want to. I do want to know. I actually do. Which,
I mean, to be fair, is way more than the Broncos had. So.
Yeah, the Broncos were
barely.
And the Broncos were playing a wide receiver who had not taken a snap in the quarterback room.
I would bet.
Which is basically Taysom Hill, though, right?
I would bet that the kid that played for the Broncos had more passing yards than Taysom Hill at the half did. He had to have at least completed 1 pass for 4 yards. Had to have. Because
I think that's all he completed, though. That was the problem.
3 yards? 3 yards at halftime passing? Really? Yeah. We need to find out still. The guy can't play quarterback. He's a wildcat. He's a hell of a wildcat.
Yeah, scoring touchdowns.
The peaks and valleys of what that guy can do, the lack of surprise is there. It was said perfectly on Sunday. Denver weren't taking the bait. They weren't. They were like, whatever. Go on, pass it. Pass it.
I also think Denver came into that game and realized they got nothing to lose. Like, what are they going to do in this game? So you might as well... If you think you got the edge, play it.
What was that defense meant to do? Like, they did. Forget the score. They were fantastic that first half. I thought.
Yeah, the Saints were at what? Were they at 14 points? And I mean, I think they were 14 points at halftime, and one of those was a scoop and score on the defense. So I believe the defense only allowed the 1 touchdown.
Janoris Jenkins is hitting intercepts. That guy couldn't catch a cold. Like, this is a guy that's hitting intercepts, all right? Like, for what they were doing, like, Denver should be pretty happy about that. I mean, I know that sucks to say. That was a 31-3, and I'm sure it was like 7-0 at halftime. I'm sure. Whatever. I hope someone out there is watching that.
Well, one of them was on the INT. They had 17 points at halftime.
Unbelievably shambolic. 15 points you had for fantasy, 1 intercept. How? How did you have an intercept? How? 4 passing first downs, sacked 3 times.
This is 1950s football, folks.
9 passes completed, and he had 78 passing yards.
Offensive genius Sean Payton calling the plays.
78 passing yards, 44 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He got bailed. He's terrible. The idea of him is fine. I like this idea that this guy can come in and kick them up a gear, right? It worked with Drew Brees because, like, say with like 3, 4, 5 minutes to go with a quarter, you throw this kid in and he can get big yards quick. But if Denver just like, it's not like Atlanta were that bad against him. He got bailed out by rushing yards and touchdowns again. We're talking about teams like they play Atlanta again this week. They'll come across Atlanta like destroyed Vegas this week.
Yeah.
Destroyed.
No one saw that coming. I didn't.
No one did. So, Atlanta, especially with Olakun, he's fantastic. Like, he can get there too. And Atlanta had no idea what was coming. They got a whole other, it'll be a different game. This guy goes like this again. Like, that's the sad thing about this is that winning, everyone forgets. Everyone forgets with winning. Oh, he won again. He's 2-0. Daniel Jones won 4 games straight. He's not that great, right? Let's call it. Look, the Giants are undefeated in the last month, but whatever. He hasn't played that great. But people see that they've won 4 on the trot and they forget. Taysom Hill's exactly that.
He finished the game with a 43.2 passer rating.
Here's something I thought I'd never say. Let's get back to the Philadelphia game.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to run right over there. So, again, not crazy about the quarterback passing yards. So how about these running backs? So we've got Chris Carson at 55.5. I'll do rushing yards first. So Chris Carson, 55.5. Miles Sanders, 65.5. The backups, Carlos Hyde, 28.5. Boston Scott 14.5.
Love it.
So of those four, any favorites, any standouts?
I was talking about this earlier today, if you don't mind. I love the secondary options. Carlos, like, if you're not sure about Chris Carson, once he not played for a while, right? It's been a minute. You're looking at Carlos Hyde, 28.5 and 7.5 receiving yards. Like, that's probably, one catch for 7.5. That's at least one dump off. I'm sure he's capable. 28.5 rushing yards in a game where I'm sure Chris Carson's healthy and he's ready to go. But, is he? Like,
if it's a run-heavy game, you got to think Hyde's going to get enough carries to get 30 yards. I agree.
Boston Scott, the way that Philly rotate running backs, is good enough for 14.5 yards in one hit, and he's good enough for 7.5 yards receiving in one hit. Like, that for me, like, I love the secondary running back options here in this game. But Carson at 55.5 feels pretty good, even though Philly's front seven, when they're on, they're great. But 55.5 for even Chris Carson seems like a cakewalk. I don't know. I love all the rushing.
I think, I was going to say both Seahawks running backs for me. I think the volume should be there. Gladys, what are you thinking? Any of these running back lines you want to get in?
Yeah, I would go with the Seattle. Philadelphia's 28 in opponents' rushing yards per game. They're allowing 133 and change. So Carson, I'm with Dan. I'm not sure that Carson is going to play. So I'm more in favor of Carlos Hyde. I mean, I know he's going to play. I just don't know if he's on a snap count. So I like Carlos Hyde's numbers. I would go. Yeah.
And the receiving yards there, we got, again, Carson 19.5, Sanders at 20.5, and Dan mentioned both Hyde and Scott at 7.5 each. I actually really like Sanders for 20.5 receiving yards. Just because, again, if we think, worries about the offensive line, Carson Wentz running is one aspect, but his dump offs to the running back another. So I think Sanders can accumulate 21 yards on the through the air.
But how do you feel about the 3.5 receptions?
Yeah, that might be one of those where he's got the ability. He could maybe get that on one catch or two catches. Going up to 4. I wouldn't want to pick the under just because buying into that receiving yards line. But yeah, maybe the 3.5. I might prefer that on Rieger actually, just knowing how much, even with the rain, the vulnerabilities of the perimeter defense of the Seahawks. I think Rieger, who's playing practically 90% of the snaps, can probably get 4 catches. I think. As we move over to the wide receivers, sorry, a transition there.
No, I like Rieger. Okay.
Eagles receivers at 3.5. Fulgham, Rieger, both 3.5 receptions there. Fulgham's at 51.5 for yards. Rieger at 49.5. Also, Greg Ward at 27.5, 2.5 catches. The tight ends, Richard Rodgers, 18.5 yards, and Dallas Goedert, 43.5 yards.
I was talking to a few. Shout out to my people at the Back Row Fantasy Show. We were talking about the single game slate today on DraftKings. I know this sounds funny, but Richard Rodgers last 3 games, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 85 yards. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 60 yards, 2 and 48 with a touchdown. So his targets have come down since Goddard's come back, but he's still hitting that decent yardage as well. I kind of like Richard Rodgers for 18.5 yards. That's weird, but watching, having to watch Philly play. Obviously, they played the Giants a week or 2 ago, and whatnot. He kind of goes to him like on those he had some trust with Richard Rodgers. I know it sounds weird to say. Richard Rodgers will catch it, and that's when you're not sure about guys like Alshon Jeffrey. Is he even playing today? I didn't even see anything on him. I don't think so. How crazy is that? I didn't even see if Alshon Jeffrey's playing. He's kind of been in and around.
He's been playing snaps. He's showing up on snap counts and stuff, but he's not producing at all. I assume he's playing, but he's probably only playing 30 to 50% of the snaps.
But there was no odds on him. That's what's crazy. There was nothing on him. So
they don't want to go. It's one of those things where if he comes alive, one catch will go over any line they have. But if they set any line, everyone's going to smash the under, and it's probably going to hit that, right? It's one of those players they're scared to.
And that's why, like, I'm looking at Rodgers at 18.5. That's one reception, and he's been going to him frequently enough over the past 3 weeks. So,
and Zach Ertz not being activated today, I think that's key to that. In that he's, the number 2 tight end in Philly is always viable. So yeah, that's probably the one I would agree with too, just because it's the lowest. I mean, I'm okay with Rieger. I think both of those. I think he can get 50 yards and 4 catches, but I probably have more faith in Rodgers getting to 19 receiving yards.
Yeah, crazy, right?
I'm just gonna check snap counts because Alshon Jeffrey. 27% 2 weeks ago. Then he only played 7% of the snaps last week. So looks like they tried to incorporate him, but yeah, last week didn't work so well. Rieger played 93%, Fulgham 96%. So those are their 2 guys. I guess the lines reflect that.
Yeah.
Gladys, do you have any thoughts on the Eagles receivers?
No, actually, I don't. I don't. I'm not. The only one I like is the tight ends. I would go with both tight ends because he likes the tight ends, and especially when he gets pressured, he will go to the tight ends. So I would go with the tight ends, if not a push, then over on both, especially Rodgers, who's playing like you said, like 3% of the snaps. He's getting at least 5 targets. Yeah, I would Rodgers. Yeah, and I like Goddard too, but the other Rieger and Fulham and Scott and Ward, I'm not really confident.
I was just checking Greg Ward's yards. He's fluctuated a fair bit, but he hasn't had less than 2 receptions since week 6.
Yeah, but he only had 9 receiving yards last week.
Yeah, I know, but he also had 40 the week before, 10 the week before that, 40 before that. But he has. If his line is at 3.5 receptions, he should hit.
He's at 2.5. 2.5.
And he should hit with his receptions. It's just yards. I wouldn't trust even that at 27.5. It's tempting.
Yeah. The 9-yard difference between him and Rodgers is so huge there.
Mental. It's mental.
Yeah. And then finally, Seahawks receivers. We all love talking about them. We'll ignore the first 2, but okay, we're not going to ignore Metcalf and Lockett. 5.5 catches each, as Dan alluded to earlier in the broadcast. Metcalf at 74.5 yards, Lockett at 71.5. Also, Hollister 2.5 catches, 20.5 yards. Will Dissly 2.5 catches, 23.5 yards. Gladys, we'll start with you. Any preferences?
In this weather, I like the big guys. So I like Metcalf over Lockett. And I actually like Dissly a lot. I would go with Dissly's numbers, and I would go with Metcalf's numbers. Lockett is a sure thing for Wilson, but I'm not sure that he's a sure thing in this game because I think, like you guys said, it's going to be a lot of running, and he's going to throw when he has to, and he's going to go for the big body guys that are going to be able to withstand the torrential rain that is happening in that stadium today. So yeah, give me Metcalf and give me Dissly, and I'm going to take a pass on Lockett's numbers.
Again, knowing that you don't really want to go under on them, just because he could hit so easily, but you're not necessarily feeling confident. It's again kind of like Wilson's passing numbers. You're just going to ignore the lines. You're not taking the overs, not taking the under. Just not convinced. Yeah.
It feels like I tend to lean the other way between Metcalf and Lockett because for Lockett, in that weather, I think he's going to make a lot of people miss.
True.
He's slippery enough as it is. So for me. He is. It's hard not to like much about this Seattle team, right? Like, how could you not like Greg Olsen? How can you not like Tyler Lockett? And everyone at this point loves DK Metcalf because he's kind of proving everyone wrong despite the hype. I kind of like Lockett to get free enough. But you're right. Like, going under on any of them feels...
Yeah.
I've always kind of felt with prop lines too. I always feel just what are the ones I feel confident in? Go with those and go with those overs, and not necessarily tempted with the under unless like you're really sure. Like there's a player that's just they're so high, you really think this defense is set up well to shut that player down. Outside of extreme cases like that, I tend to always kind of try and favor the overs more. I like both Metcalf and Lockett for receptions more, and I think that goes in line again with Wilson's completions, right? Are the yards going to be there in the range? So I don't know about, again, it's not picking under on yards on either, because both so easily could get 100 yards. That 74.5, 71.5. I'm not going to pick under that, but I think I'm more confident in the overs on receptions on both.
I saw this earlier today. Either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett or both have had 90-plus receiving yards in each of the first 8 games this season. Neither had 90-plus yards in the last 2 games. But we're talking about 71 and 75. So, they're both fairly comfortable getting the yards. It's not like an either-or thing. They're both capable at the same time. It's not like other teams. Like, I don't know where Darius Slayton was this week, but I know where Sterling Shepard was. Does that make sense? We're talking about 2 of arguably the best receivers in the game that are going to chalk up massive yards whenever they want. We'll just see if Philly can keep up at this point.
All right, keeping up with the show sheet, Dan actually brought up a really good point. Always treating us with these. The interesting between Fulgham and Metcalf, right? And the expectations going into this year, obviously, where they were drafted in fantasy drafts, and certainly reflected by that, or the lack of being drafted in fantasy drafts in Fulgham's case. But as of right now, the 16-game pace is Fulgham's line would be 128 targets, 71 receptions, 1,031 yards, 9 touchdowns. Metcalf only 112 targets is his pace, 70 receptions, so technically 1 less than Fulgham, 1,254 yards, 13 touchdowns, more there. But the targets, the disparity in targets is quite surprising right now. The on pace to 128 for Fulgham, 112 for Metcalf. Kind of crazy that Metcalf and everything we know about him and where he is, receiver rankings, you expect, okay, that's got to be a guy that's locked in for 120 targets, right? Like he's reached that threshold, and right now his pace says no.
I think also you got to take into consideration Travis Fulgham was absolutely shut down by James Bradbury twice. Just throwing that out there as well.
I wonder why you wanted to say that. Filifragula, after all.
There we go. I just had to put that in there. But as much as a cheap shot as that could be, like, Fulgham's been fantastic. Like, he's on average, 8 targets, 4.5 receptions, 64.5 yards, and half a touchdown per game. We're looking at Metcalf at 7 targets, 4.5 receptions, 78.5 yards, and 0.8 touchdowns a game. He's not far off. Like, he's not far off for a guy that came to a team, week 6 or something? No preseason. He came off the street. He said, "This is the route I can run." Wentz said, "Okay, no dramas." Got him. Like, it's kind of madness. Like, how good I'll give Philly as much stick as anybody else. I'll praise them when you have to. Travis Fulgham, to this point, how can you argue with what he's done? Like, again, okay, Bradbury's done that to a lot of people this year. But what he's done every other week has been fantastic. No matter what. Like, the guy's been – I mean, this is one of the better – this will be a guy that wins a lot of – we're talking about DJ Chark last year winning a lot of people a lot of titles, right? Guy from the waiver wire comes from nowhere. Travis Fulgham's going to be that guy this year. That's how easy Fulgham's going to be for a lot of people. James Robinson, Travis Fulgham are 2 guys that are going to win people single-handedly fantasy championships because they come from nowhere. That's it.
Presuming that when you actually invested things in players, you actually made the right decisions, because someone picking them up with the team being garbage might not win a title there. But but certainly if you set up your team properly, having those free tickets just adds so much value.
Listen, like a lot of people,
even if let's say you traded one of them to get a legit top 5, top 10 asset, package them together, like, that's so worth it if you got them for free off waivers.
Oh, yeah. Think about, like, the amount of people that bombed Fab onto Ernest Johnson when Nick Chubb went down, right? Fulgham and Robinson are 2 guys that have come out from nowhere, really, and was it Robinson's the RB2 or something? He's going to catch Kamara. I don't know if he has. I've got to double down on this.
Especially
did he pass Cook? And I think Henry had such a monster game. You got to think he.
I'd be surprised if he can. Let me just check this.
He's probably top 5 though. I think he's.
No, he was already the RB3 heading into last week.
He was.
He was ridiculous. No, RB4 at this point. 17.
I think Henry probably jumped him.
Well, Henry now has about 8 more points, which you can imagine after a 3 touchdown weekend, that's going to happen. but he's only – Kamara's that far ahead. Well, I guess it doesn't matter what Taysom Hill does it? But where he's at now, like Josh Jacobs won't catch him, Zeke won't catch him, Aaron Jones maybe at 159.
Not the way they've been. It's basically been a 50-50 split there. So
that's the thing. And then you're looking at Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt, and Edwards-Helaire, who's starting to pick up the pace. Antonio Gibson's about 30-odd points behind James Robinson. So that's kind of madness when you think about it. I want to say since week 6, where are we, PPR? Like Fulgham's season's that underrated since week 6. Where is he?
I think it was earlier than week 6, to be honest. But
I feel like it wasn't. I could be wrong though. I'll have a look for that. You carry on. I'll look for this. Let me do
here. Okay. So Gladys, any comments about Travis Fulgham? I guess so. That's really the point of the conversation, or
No, I think that he came in and there was no competition. So
Week 4.
Week 4. So yeah, he was getting the majority of the snaps because there was no one else to have the snaps. All his other wide receivers were out. Ertz was out. Goddard was out. I think that he will come back to the mean because all the wide receivers are better, are healthier, and Goddard's back. And we know how Wentz likes his tight ends. I think that Fulgham will come back to the mean. I think that he has helped people get into the fantasy playoffs. And they have if Wentz was any more reliable, they would have a schedule in fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but because of his unreliability, I don't think I'm as high on Fulgham as you guys are. But it's a great schedule.
We don't have to like this for Philly in terms of like wins and losses. The game against Seattle tonight. But for fantasy, this is a prime matchup. Fulgham since week 4 is the wide receiver 27 with 100 points, averaging 14.3 in PPR. And again, that comes down with 2 lockdown performances from James Bradbury.
So Wentz's first pass was a complete pass to Richard Rodgers. Yay.
Was it?
Wentz's first pass, incomplete pass to Richard Rodgers.
So, we know
where the targets are going to go. I will say one thing, Gladys, is that maybe target share probably definitely will go down for Fulgham, at least certainly to what it was when everyone was hurt. But he still played 86% of the snaps last week. It seems like he and Rager are the 2 starting wide receivers, so I don't think his snaps are going to come down. But it's just, is he going to get the targets or not? I think
we're talking about a team where the highest, especially with like these props. I know it tells a bit of a story. No one's over 4 receptions. They haven't got any of the Philly receivers, and he's still leading the charge at 3.5 with Goddard and Rager. And Rager's been spotty at best. So unless Alshon Jeffrey comes from nowhere and does something, I don't see him not being the number 1 receiver on this team. And while they're still in the playoff hunt, that's absolutely something people should be putting their hats on. And he's going to do okay tonight, I think.
Second pass, incomplete pass to Ward. He's on a roll.
All the players you mentioned.
We can call Carson Wentz many things, but consistent is one.
Yeah. This year it's been pretty consistent.
I'm sorry. So if I have to watch a Philly game, then I'm getting this out in the open.
I expected nothing less.
There we go. But yeah, I don't know why Fulgham, sorry, he's been their top receiver this year, and we're talking about like Jeffrey and Jackson not being there next year. We can all kiss this whole idea of Osage-Whiteside being something. He's gone. We're talking about Fulgham and Riga being there 1 and 2 next year. That's a big deal, especially for Dynasty. Like, you've got him for nothing. You got him for nothing, and he's probably going to take the next steps forward with Wentz or Jalen Hurts next year.
This definitely doesn't look like this is just going to be a 1-season flash in the pan, just because of how he's been able to remain. This clearly hasn't been a 1 or 2 week thing either. Like he's had staying power in spite of all the situations of no draft capital being picked up off the street.
Listen, this is a big thing for Carson Wentz too, to develop that trust with other players, because for so long it was Zach Ertz, and it was for a while. When they were peaking, it was Alshon Jeffrey.
Yep. Those two would get 100 targets each every year.
Listen, Darren Sproles was viable at some point. Right? We laugh, but he was. And you've taken all those guys away from him in the past. Especially like Zach Ertz, like this year, what's in a contract year as well? Is he going to be in Philly next year? I don't know. They had issues with contracts, right? So you're talking about Dallas Goedert's going to have to step up to be the tight end that they thought he could be. They need Rager to turn out because this can't be another number one, a first-round wide receiver that bombs on him. And Fulgham's come from nowhere and he's looked the goods. So, this is huge. Even for Wentz in Philadelphia, that's a receiving pass to, looks like Chris Carson. Happy days. But look at that. Russell Wilson can actually throw a ball and someone can catch it. It's amazing.
No excuses, right?
It's a good learning experience for someone that like Carson Wentz. It's good for him to watch a professional quarterback. I hope Taysom Hill's tuning in as well. This would be interesting.
So what you're saying is, what the Eagles shouldn't have never traded Sam Bradford. They should have let him mentor Wentz. That was their mistake. That's what set their franchise back. They did win a Super Bowl the next year, but whatever.
He did wonders for Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum. So, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl.
Hey, Case Keenum had a career year with Sam Bradford as his mentor.
Nick Foles won a Super Bowl under the tutelage of Sam Bradford. We can laugh, but Metcalf has a 15-yard reception. Happy days. So this is going to happen. We were talking about that. You don't want to go the unders on these Seattle receivers, but we'll see what happens. I think we've underestimated Pete Carroll a little bit. I know we always do, but I think there's a high carry. He's going to run Chris Carson into the ground. He is as well. Oh yeah, we'll put him a snap count. Garbage.
The snap count is 100% of them, or whatever he can handle.
A Pete Carroll snap count is non-existent.
Well, that's why, players on a snap count. But what if internally the snap count is okay, we're going to let him play up to 90% of the snaps. That's not really a snap count. It's most players don't play 90% of the snaps, right? So it's one of those things where you say it, but until you know the number, it doesn't really mean anything.
That's it, snap count. He played the snaps and we counted them at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know much more we can say about this, but Philadelphia didn't look good on that first drive, and Seattle already looked clinical. So we know how this is going to go. We can kick on to a Sunday recap if you want to do that quickly. I know you're going to like this, if I can. Detroit have fired another GM and a coach. That was long overdue. They got rid of a coach that was 9-7 for back-to-back years and had their last playoff win for Matt Patricia. It's a good idea.
They just to speak on that, Jim Caldwell had an 11-5 season with them. So I don't you got to go all the way back to Barry Sanders, early career Barry Sanders when they had 11 wins before.
So bad. What are you doing?
This is why Bob Quinn should have been fired, but he should have been fired before he fired Caldwell and hired Patricia.
You know what's a good idea? Let's get a guy that is bad and he's being carried by Bill Belichick. This is ridiculous. Let's just buy all the guys he won with 4 years ago. I'm sure they're still in peak condition. Madness. And Dave Caldwell got fined from Jacksonville yesterday as well, which probably tells you Doug Marone's time is probably up in Jacksonville. He's probably going to ride the year out.
That was the rumor, was that ownership announced to all the coaching staff that their job is secure until the end of the season, and then you're all gone, basically. I'm assuming it's the next conversation that happened, but they're 1-10.
Listen, we laugh about Adam Gase being pivotal to the Jets' success. He is. He needs to keep losing.
Same with Marone.
That's right. They need to keep losing because while there are other teams out there that are equally as bad, they need to be equally worse. So, good for Jacksonville. They might think they're a chance at Justin Fields, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Unless they make an offer the Jets can't refuse and trade up to get Lawrence.
No, it'd be heavily. If they really think, I like Sam Darnold. I don't know how you both feel about him. I think he's fine.
I don't think he's the problem there.
They
traded up to get him third overall for a reason. That reason doesn't not exist anymore, right?
I'm aware of that, but also, the guy's had issues with his health.
Yeah.
So that's what he missed 6 games last year with mono and his shoulder this year. So the guy's. And he's young. He's young. So, I mean, I know that can happen, but like, you want to go into your fourth season with a quarterback that can't finish a season. I don't know about that.
I mean, to talk about that same draft class, it's looked so far like the Cardinals were suited to immediately move on from Rosen and get a quarterback. So it doesn't like if you believe in Lawrence, there's never a pick that's too early or never a time that's wrong to get him. So
it's all well and good to say Lawrence, but you want to see what coaches they bring in. I would be terrified of being a coach. I know everyone wants that opportunity, but I would be terrified of coaching for the Jets. That just. I mean, someone's going to do it, but like they were talking about Joe Brady in Carolina. If whoever comes last, go get Joe Brady, team up with Trevor Lawrence. Okay,
and what does Eric Bieniemy go to the Jags then?
I don't think he goes anywhere. What
really?
We can all say that he's been overlooked, and he has, and we could all say that he would go to another team and go nuts, and he probably will. Personally, how long do you think Andy Reid's going to coach for? He's got a lot more years in him. I'm sure he's got a lot of years in him, but I mean, that if you're at a team that if you know that you've got Pat Mahomes for the next 10 years, I'm not going anywhere.
Maybe. Or at the very least, be patient with it. Like, okay, you know what? If the team's like, if he doesn't want to go to Jags or Jets, and that's all that's offered, okay, right? I'll stay another year at OC and keep. Because I guess if the idea is you've already waited too long at this point, what's another year?
You just saw what happened in Detroit. Would you want to go there if you're Eric Bieniemy? You want to rebuild that mess?
If anything, the Jets maybe look more appealing because the GM's in place, and at least you've got it looks like they made some really good draft picks this year, so at least there's like kind of a hope with the front office with the Jets. I think a lot of their problems are coaching, right? So I think in that sense it's a good fit. But yeah, you're right with Detroit because that entire organization is
a mess.
Ownership down. There's problems.
Yeah, there is. You want to go to a division that has Aaron Rodgers? I don't want no piece of that. I'm sorry. You're looking at having to rebuild a team and win at the same time against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, who Rodgers in career best form. Like this is, I mean, the Jaguars. I mean, that's a winnable division. They've shown that in 2017. I get it, but that. I mean,
the Titans. The Titans aren't who they are now in 2017, though. So
no, I'm saying the Jaguars. The Jaguars were with Bortles and Fournette when they went on that run. They were a tipped Blake Bortles pass from going to the Super Bowl.
They were a ref blowing the whistle too quickly away from going to the Super Bowl.
That's the fine margin, and then they end up being a shambles. They showed who they really were. But I mean, if you're Bieniemy and you're like, I don't need these jobs. Like, why would I want those? I mean, Bieniemy.
Would you take Chicago?
Atlanta.
Oh, we assume that Chicago's going to need a new head coach next year too.
I would think Atlanta's more appealing.
True.
I would think Atlanta's maybe.
I would think the Texans are more appealing than Atlanta because they have.
Houston. Sorry,
the quarterback, of course. Yeah.
What? Like, if there was ever a job, Deshaun Watson, you've got your quarterback.
Yeah.
The next 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, their draft is going to be absolutely shot to Bill O'Brien, and their salary cap has to be atrocious too. But you got Deshaun Watson. Oh, and Will Fuller's out with PEDs. He's done.
Yes, we should have mentioned that. Yeah, so, done for the season.
Done for the season. So that's him. So that's Kiki Kuti and my guy Isaiah Coulter. And this could also be a thing where it's like more Jordan Akins or from nowhere,
And I don't know, this was, I just briefly saw it too. Kenny Stills was waived. Yeah, so A, does that mean they're confident in Randall Cobb's health? And B, again, maybe like to your point, Dan, Isaiah Coulter suddenly is the number 3, maybe number 4 receiver there.
I feel like they had I'm going to get this wrong. DeAndre Thomas, I think they had another.
DeAndre
Carter, sorry. Like, there's another guy from out of nowhere that could be something. So, those are the things that you're looking at because Watson, there's no Hopkins, no Fuller, no Cobb, no Stills. There's no David Johnson. He's got no O-line. That poor guy. What has happened to Sean Watson this year?
And they still won a game, but I mean, again, the Lions, Patricia. But
it's absolutely criminal what has happened to Deshaun Watson this year. Criminal. But you've got him. And he is what a lot of teams need and what a lot of teams want. And you're right. Houston would be awesome if I'd want to know who that GM is. But
can't be worse than Bill O'Brien, that's for sure.
I mean, well, everything in rose-colored glasses looks pretty nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I kind of like the idea of Atlanta. You got Ridley, you got some nice young pieces there. The O-line's pretty good when they're healthy. They're pretty good. Defense needs some help, but Matt Ryan's still not the worst option out there.
You should be looking at the Chargers too, because
right.
very long.
You think he'd go to a divisional rival like that?
Yes, with Justin Herbert. Yes.
I think if it's the best chance for a job, that's a better offensive line. It's probably, like you said, Dan, they're going to have a better draft this year just because they're going to have first and second round picks, right? I mean, that's a better situation.
I like the idea of Houston, actually. That sounds awesome. But I also don't think he...
And how big would that be?
I think there's too many vacancies this year. He's got to get a job this time around.
Yeah.
If he wants it, right? Again, that's the key question. But it seems like he wants it. He's been interviewing every year. I'd be shocked if he's not a head coach in 2021.
Oh, and let's hope he is. He's clearly brilliant, but we've also seen with offensive coordinators that come out of Kansas, Matt Nagy, they tend to not do that great. But there's going to be a lot of teams up for grabs, and he should be the first name at the top. I know Robert Sala's name's come up a bit. I'm sure he's worthy. I reckon. I mean, Vic Fangio in Denver. I mean, that's a name. I mean, we can blame Drew Lock all we like or whatever, but talk about a young team with a lot of promise. My God, that team has got points in them.
Yeah.
You patch that lineup a little bit, and all of a sudden Denver's a contender, I think. Their defense is still pretty good. They kept Taysom Hill to 3 passing yards at halftime.
I mean, I don't know that's really necessarily anything to do with the defense, but I guess because we harp on Detroit and maybe problems with the ownership there, but at least they've got an owner. Like Denver, there's so much uncertainty right now. I don't know if Bieniemy wants to walk into that. And let's face it, they probably don't have their franchise quarterback yet. Like that still needs to be addressed. You got to think. No, Denver. I don't think Lock's the long-term answer. So he goes there and he's suddenly having to look for his quarterback again. Unlike, say, the Chargers, the Texans, even the Falcons, you've got your guys established. So to your credit, Dan, those are probably the best spots to be in because they've got quarterbacks. And I think there's also that idea that if a team has a franchise quarterback, there's probably some, especially for a guy like Herbert, right? Like you're the coach being hired to be Herbert's coach, right? Whereas Lynn's been there before they even took Herbert, right? So that type of idea, you figure he's going to get time to work with him and let him grow, right? So if you get tied to a franchise quarterback, it probably helps your longevity of your career, or job at least, as opposed to with a Drew Lock, right? I mean, he could tank your season as a coach and then you're gone, not because you're bad, but because Lock's so bad. That's just an example.
I feel a little bad for Anthony Lynn because he was tied to Phillip Rivers. And this is his first shot with a kid. Okay, they're 2-8. They lost Eckler. Your quarterback to start the year had his lung punctured by a doctor. Like what? That's not written, at the start of the season how your year's going to go. Like this is that's stiff. And I know he's had plenty of time with the other teams that he's had. But if you think Herbert's that guy for this team, I mean, what they did with Eckler at the end of the game yesterday was embarrassing. But at the same time, you'd think maybe another. I feel like Lynn might get one more year because I can see why they'd move on. I can see why they'd also keep him about one more year as well. But I mean, that being said, if they feel like the enemy's the guy, then maybe they'll make a play.
I think they like him. I think he's a good guy. They
love him there.
Yeah,
they love him.
It's not like a Dan Patricia thing where players, ex-players, and everyone is saying, "Oh my God, this guy's a piece of shit." He's just making really bad decisions, and his teams are still losing. They can't close games.
Did Dimitrov get fired from Atlanta?
Because this year's so wacky.
Dimitrov, he got fired when Quinn got fired.
But I mean, it also goes to say that if a GM stays too loyal to a head coach, then they could be cooked too. Because Dimitrov and Quinn were pretty tight, and he went down with the shit too. So I know it wasn't.
I do wonder how much of that is okay. The defense has been really bad, and that's got to be on.
John Elway's not getting fired in Denver. You know what I mean?
Who's going to fire him? Right? They don't have an owner right now, so he's basically like the de facto person who runs that team. Like, no one's firing him. No one can fire him. I don't think.
Yeah, there's a guy that the guy that's going against the family, and I can't remember his name, is the one who's running the team.
Yeah.
Do you want to be the guy that fires John Elway from Denver? Like, if you're trying to take this team away from this family that's owned it the entire length, like, you need as much good publicity and as maybe as good of a structural decision that might be. The publicity behind it, yeah, that's tough.
They don't care. They don't care right now. They don't care. John Elway, they love John Elway, but it's proven that he is not the best thing for the team. Like the Denver PR around here, I don't think it would be as bad as people think if they fired him.
All right. Any other topics to broach before we leave?
Nope. Metcalf has 3 receptions on 4 targets.
So yeah, maybe we should have told people to take the overs on both of those.
And Chris Carson is averaging 4.5 yards a carry right now.
So he looks fine.
I just want to tell people that somehow Cleveland's 8-3.
Yeah, I know. They almost lost the Jags.
This isn't anything against. No, hang on. This is an anti-Cleveland thing. I have no problem with Cleveland, right? I think they're 8-3, and people are treating them like they're 3-8. Listen, Stefanski got. How did Minnesota go last year with that team? With Kirk Cousins, Caldwell.
They beat the Saints in New Orleans in a playoff game.
Like we're talking about that guy not knowing what he's doing, or Cleveland not being good enough. They're 8-3. They're by default because of what's going on with Baltimore. They're second in their division.
Oh, they're 8-3 because of Kevin Stefanski. I mean, there's no.
I also think
they now have Nick Chubb back healthy. Forget Odell Beckham. Yeah. That wasn't their thing anyway. It didn't matter. They got they'll run the tight ends if they have to. They'll run Harrison Bryant. They'll run. But this is exactly what he wants. Like Beckham not being there might have
been the best thing for Cleveland.
It could have been. I don't want to say. It's someone's health. I don't feel like that's the right thing to say. But it's worked out for him. It hasn't been as detrimental as what people think because they're 8-3, and they're being treated like nothing. And I think they get Myles Garrett back next week. I feel like he missed the last couple games. Yes. This is like people have to start taking notice. And I get the 3 games they played over the last few weeks, aside from Jacksonville, they were in wet weather games and they were atrocious, but they still won those tough games. Like those are
but they have before yesterday they only had in the last 3 games two offensive touchdowns. Yeah. So they're winning on their defense, and I think a lot of the thing is Baker Mayfield. He came in with all the hype, and
he hasn't been as bad as Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold.
What's the thing? So Josh Allen is now looking like the best quarterback from that class.
I mean, give it time. I think Josh Allen has been set up by incredible recruiting. And he's been set up by incredible recruitment. Stephon Diggs is going to be the signing of the year. I think he's been amazing. But at the same time, 8-3.
He's 0-4 right now. He's had 4 attempts and he has not completed a pass.
You say this like we should be surprised.
I'm surprised. Well, I'm surprised he hasn't thrown a pick yet. So there's that. I mean, I'm surprised it's just 4 incompletions.
We're talking about a team.
That's crazy.
So, I just want to comment quickly on Cleveland. Stefanski credit for sure. I think what we're seeing in Cleveland is the first, probably, I don't know, I haven't really been paying attention to that as long to know, but maybe for the first time since this team has come back in 1999, that there's actual organizational unilateral decision making. Everyone knows what they want to do from ownership down. Paul DePodesta is in charge of that team. He hired the head coach he's built the team the way he wants, with the head coach he knows wants to coach that way. Everything makes sense. I think everything is set up that way from the top down. And I think that's the first time, because Cleveland has been disaster after disaster. Part of it's come from ownership, and now the organization, everyone knows what to do. It just seems like there's clarity finally, and that's the result there.
They had a good draft. I feel like they had a good draft. They got rid of some dead wood as well. But, they're 8-3, and people are just they're waiting for the penny to drop, and that's fine. But I mean, at the same time, a big step for them is to get to the playoffs. They got to break because they get to the playoffs. I don't care what happens to them after that. Now you want to look at what they do for 2021. Okay, I don't expect them to knock off Kansas or Pittsburgh or whatever, but them getting there is a big deal, and that's a big hurdle that they're going to have to break, and if they can do it, massive. I think it's like Buffalo, right? Buffalo.
I was going to say the same thing.
That's a big step. You get past that mental block. That's a big step going forward. Then you're looking at what they can do in terms of recruitment in 2021, the draft for 2021. That's a big deal. So I mean, I think people need to start looking at Cleveland a little bit more. More because they play, I think, Philadelphia. They play, I think, the Giants. They play a couple games. They're going to be a 10-11 win team. I mean, we're not. And yet it's still treated like a joke. I think at this point we've got to look at Cleveland and give them a bit more props.
If they were in any other division, they'd have a chance at the division title.
I mean, sure. I'm an NFC East guy, and I've heard this for the past 12 weeks. So I get that too. But I mean, I think you see how the NFC South is kind of falling apart. Like Tampa are falling apart, and New Orleans, I'm still not sold on them. And, Carolina looked okay for bits and pieces, and Atlanta kind of flashed. But, you throw Cleveland in that division, and I think they'd win more games than not because they seem just consistently solid the whole way through. You don't see, stupid – Mayfield might throw the odd pick here or there, but you don't really see a lot of stupid plays. They kind of seem fairly safe at this point. And that's a big thing for them in that franchise. They seem safe. Yeah. They're about to make the playoffs, and no one's expecting anything from them. That's a big deal. I think we got to watch that over the next few weeks.
Well, if the playoff standings stay the way they are, they have a good chance of winning their first round game in the playoffs too. Going against Buffalo, I would bet on Cleveland's run game against Buffalo.
Every day. Yeah. Every day. You can see how they'll do that. They'll just run it down their throat. And I'd like Cleveland's run game against. It'll be hard because Derrick Henry's a monster, but I like Cleveland's run game against Tennessee.
Titans defense has been struggling, yeah.
There you go. So you look at certain matchups, you're like, man, they're one of those teams. No one's going to like the idea of coming up against Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Jarvis Landry, he's still good. He's not bad by any stretch. They got 3 big tight ends that can do damage, and Mayfield's shifty. So I mean, this is I think Myles Garrett's. He won't win Defensive Player of the Year, but he should be in the conversation this year. He's had a pretty good year.
He was probably in the conversation last year before the Rudolph thing.
Yeah,
sorry, Gladys.
He was probably in the conversation until he got hurt. I mean,
and getting texts from people who have Will Fuller and their lineups, and they're upset.
I mean, at least you got a good game from him this week in your lineup.
Exactly, he had 38 points. He had 38 fantasy points this week. Come on. They'll be fine. They're just panicking because they're crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think we're all crazy for you, our listeners. So thank you all for listening, watching, staying on. You've got Gladys at Never Enough GLT on Twitter. Dan's at the B League Says. I'm at Senra Says. You can also, of course, at Going for Two for everything Going for Two related. Check out the articles, goingfor2.com. I appreciate it. I hope I'm going to see everyone back for week 13. Gladys, as always, will be available on Sunday mornings for the Sunday morning war rooms. Dan's got the back row Giants. I'll let you two plug your own work.
No, we're good. And Metcalf has 4 receptions, so he's going over his 5.5.
Probably, yeah.
In the Dan.
What a great day.
Money on that.
Still 0-0. So 0-0 still. So, what are you going to do? We said the unders, right? We were pretty adamant about the unders. Even I still can't believe that came up a point.
No.
Wow. It came up a point and whatever. But,
everyone happy December, too. Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Decorations or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate decorations up.
Fantasy football playoffs. That's just the season, right?
I'm myself out of the fantasy playoffs. I have lost 3 in a row. But I'll win next week.
We'll get on. Don't worry about it. We'll have a good December.
Yeah, great. And hopefully we all had a good Week 12 Monday Night War Room. So again, thank you all.
Thanks, Kyle.
See you next
Thanks,
week.
Dan. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.